All right, Alexander, let's do an update on the military situation unfolding in Ukraine. We seem to be getting a Russian advance, well, across the entire front lines, but specifically in Pokrovsk area, it
Yeah.
seems. The Dnipro region, Pokrovsk, Chasov Yar is in Russian hands.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is accepted as well.
Pretty much.
Uh,
I mean, including by the
right.
Ukrainians, by the
Yeah.
way. I mean, there is a sort of what is called in this part of the world a micro district. This is something that the Soviets used to do. That near a city, they would create a kind of satellite community where people who work in the city would live, and they would commute from the micro district to the city itself, a kind of housing estate, if you like. But these are much bigger than housing estates, kind of small town near the main town. Anyway, apparently there's some sections of this micro district where there are still Ukrainian troops. But Chasov Yar, the city, the town of Chasov Yar, appears to be entirely in Russian control. And I don't think anybody really disputes that anymore. Overall,
no one talks about it, though.
No,
it's not being reported on at all.
Given how much importance and how many, forests of trees were chopped down to discuss the situation in Chasov Yar just a few weeks ago, it's astonishing to see how this has, dropped out of all discussion. But the overall picture is the Russians advancing right across the front lines, as you rightly say. They do seem to be two particular places where they are really hitting the Ukrainians very hard. One is in Sumy region, where they continue to advance. We discussed this in a recent program. They're taking more positions every single day. There doesn't seem to be any really well-organized Ukrainian defense in Sumy, except in one place, which is a village called Yunakovka. Everywhere else, the Russians seem to be able to advance. I won't say without resistance, but anyway, they're able to advance and take and gain territory all the time. And the other is in central Donbas, which arguably has always been the single most important area of the battlefields, the area between Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka. And these are the two most important towns, and the Russians are pressing hard on both of them. They have mostly, I mean, you look at maps, they've mostly surrounded both of these places. And they apparently have captured the high ground around all of them. The supply roads to both of these two towns are becoming increasingly precarious. They're dominated and controlled by Russian drones. The Ukrainians, again, are resisting around these two towns, which if they lose, by the way, then in my opinion, they've lost Donbas. I mean, if Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka fall, then the rest of Donbas will inevitably follow, probably quite quickly. So the Ukrainians are still resisting, but they don't seem to be able to resist very effectively. And in the area of Konstantinovka, one is hearing lots of reports of Ukrainian troops being surrounded, about the defenses there becoming increasingly fragmented. And in the area around Pokrovsk, the Russians not only are far to the west of Pokrovsk, but they are to the north and east of Pokrovsk too. So it's been taken into a sort of huge semicircle. And if you look on a map, it's like the sort of crest of a wave. He's about to engulf it. So it looks as if the situation is becoming very difficult for the Ukrainians. They themselves are saying so. And beyond that, Putin is claiming that Ukrainian units right across the entire combat line are at only 47% strength, and that the actual frontline units are even weaker, which perhaps explains why the Russian advances are becoming faster and faster, because the Ukrainians are able to put up less and less resistance, and the infantry that is trying to defend these positions is becoming exhausted. Every day, by the way, you hear about fortified positions that the Ukrainians have, which have passed under Russian control. And I suspect that many of these fortified positions are undefended, that you have large areas of trenches and bunkers and things of that kind, which have been created by the Ukrainians, and that there are no actual soldiers manning them. And that is what Mariana Bezuglaya, the Ukrainian MP, has been talking about for some time. And I think that this is almost certainly true, and it's consistent with these disastrous personnel shortages, and it shows it's having its effect now on the battlefields.
Yeah, and Putin also said that the mobilization efforts, especially with trying to mobilize and draft 18-year-olds, has failed as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the situation in Sumy. Do you have any update there as what's going on there?
Yeah, my own guess, and I said this, I think, in a previous program, is that eventually the Russians will attack the city of Sumy itself. Group of forces north, which is the military force that is attacking Sumy, are talking about what they call the regional center all the time now. And that is clearly the city of Sumy. And you can see how the Russians are gradually, as they always do, by the way, they never attack a place head on. They like to take all the places around. They like to cut the branches before they fell the tree. I mean, that's how they work. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking places close to Sumy, north of Sumy. They're starting to threaten the roads. They're putting more and more drones in the skies. And we're hearing less and less now, by the way, about Ukrainian drones. Ukraine is apparently starting to run short of drones. There's been an article about this in the British media that previously Ukraine was able to match Russian drone numbers. It can't anymore, apparently, on the front lines. So gradually, Sumy, the city of Sumy, is being cut off. And I think that at some point in the next few weeks or months, we're likely to see a Russian assault upon it. And what tends to happen now is when the Russians are able to cut off all the branches from the tree, then the tree quite quickly collapses. When the Russians enter a city, whereas, as I said, the supply roads have all been cut, the Ukrainians aren't able to put up a prolonged resistance anymore. So it's not like Mariupol and Marinka and Bakhmut, where battles to capture these places took not just months, but sometimes years. When the Russians enter, big cities today, already the battle is in effect over. And the collapse when it comes fast. You saw that with Selidovo and Kurakovo. You saw this with Ugledar. You saw this with place after place now. The Ukrainians' ability to defend for prolonged periods of time is reducing.
Yeah. So you have Sumy in the north. You have the center. The Russians are moving on the center, and they're moving on the south. I mean, it's
and they completely dominate the skies. I mean, this is their drones. I mean, their drone offensive, their Duran drone offensive has become incredibly sophisticated. We no longer have a single generic Duran 2 drone, the one with the motorcycle engine and making all that funny noise and all of that. We have now different versions of the Duran drone, some of them incredibly sophisticated, some of them acting as kind of reconnaissance drones, others, acting like kind of dive bombers, some with jet engines, some with much bigger warheads, and some using some elements of AI technology. some of them controlled from a distance by controllers. And the Russians are able to send up hundreds of these every night now and conduct incredibly complex and very sophisticated operations with them, supplemented with ballistic missile strikes, which the Ukrainians aren't really able to repel anymore. The Ukrainians, by the way, on this, in my opinion, have now drifted into Baghdad Bob country. There's been some big Russian missile strikes on Kiev, and the Ukrainians are claiming that they shot down everything that was launched against Kiev, except that we now have pictures and photos and film, which the Ukrainians aren't able to suppress any longer, which show the missile strikes and the drone strikes impacting right across the city, and reports that a particular warehouse was destroyed recently and massive damage was done to ammunition stocks, and also a strike on the airfield where the Patriot missiles are located, and again, some reasons to think that significant damage was done to the Patriot missiles that are kept there. So all of this is going on all the time, every night. I mean, it never stops anymore. And can I just, for the sake of comparison, say we're hearing a huge amount about aerial strikes that Israel and Iran are conducting against each other. What the Russians are now doing over Ukraine dwarfs that.
Yeah, and Ukraine's not going to be getting any more air defense systems, at least not in the shorter medium term, given everything that's happening between Israel and Iran.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're in big trouble.
Exactly.
Zelensky should capitulate and take the deal.
Exactly.
Istanbul Plus.
Yeah.
Before it's too late.
Exactly.
He won't. No. All right.
No.
We will end the video there. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockford, and X. Go to the Duran shop. Pick up some merch like what we are wearing in this video update. The link is in the description box down below. Take care.